All right, here we go. Everybody, welcome to week 162. Yes, week 162 of doing this. Just 2 weeks to slow the spread and plus 160 more. So anyway, yes, you guys know the drill. Hit us up with the Q&A, harass us in the chat. It's kind of a big day today, actually, because it's the Most Admired CEOs award night at the Westin, sold out, and our very own friend and client Joe Gass is one of those nominees. So I'm going to have to get out of my t-shirt, got my Whitewater Center t-shirt on today. I'm going to have to put on a stinking suit and tie and try to act like Jack. That's not going to go so well. Anyway, we have a treat for you today. We've got Anna Stallmann. She has her own PR firm here in Charlotte, but I met her through Tana Green, very discriminating and discerning and impeccable taste on what she wants from a PR standpoint. So she introduced me to Anna a while ago. I think it was even before COVID. And she has an amazing background doing stuff at the highest levels, including the White House in Washington, D.C. But she has a wonderful PR firm, and she's got a great perspective. I also introduced her to one of our toughest customers, like moved from New York City. He's an attorney. He also has a very strong design background too, which is really interesting. And he was looking for a good PR person. So I introduced him to Anna, and he has said that she is the best PR person he's ever worked with. So there you go. The bar is very high, Anna. So what we're going to talk about is, what can you do for reputation management? What can you do in threatening and recessionary times? What should you be doing from a brand perspective and a reputation management perspective? And I think from a PR standpoint, the reason I like having somebody from PR is because in just my experience, and I came as a graphic designer, so you got to understand that, but PR has a level of sophistication that's a little bit higher, like, we did a lot of fun stuff as graphic designers, but there's a little bit higher level of seriousness when it comes to PR, because there's crisis management and stuff like that. And a funny ad isn't going to get you out of that. So that is also something that we can talk about. So before we kind of unleash questions and stuff like that on PR, reputation management, get those things ready and to rock and roll. But I figured we'd go ahead and, oh, hey, Joe Gass, he's on there. Yeah. So thank you so much. We're looking forward to seeing you too, buddy. And congratulations. Well deserved, Joe. Hope you win it. So, oh, these chats are so much fun. Adam or Jack, it's kind of, I'm going to toss up the ball and see who gets it. Oh, Joe did win it. Awesome. Good for you, Joe. That's exciting. Well, I'll even put on a tie for that. So Adam, Jack, you want to talk about anything that's going on right now before we release Anna to talk about some things that she's seeing?
I don't have anything new. I'm also equally as excited to hear your presentation or your topics that you're going to discuss, Anna, because, I kind of echo Gary's comments that as a consumer of services, like everybody, I'm in marketing, I'm in PR. Well, what do you really do? You sell branded pens, yet, especially, I'm not joking. That actually happened to me in the very beginning. Because everybody said, nobody says I sell branded pens. They say I'm in marketing and PR. So it, yet at the same time, I think every client we have, and it's like very few of our clients, would they say reputation and PR is not important, we generate sales through whatever. It's like, I think even retail, the reputation and brand of the company is what's driving people to this, like the exclusivity, or whatever, like whatever their strategy is, it's still driving it. So it's like, it's still critically important, especially in me and Jack's world. It's like, even though we work hard to, brand our firms respectively as, BGW and, Shoemaker, I mean, people are still, buying from Adam and Jack, and Gary. And it's like, it really is one of those topics that, is so critically important. And yet it's one of those topics where it's like, I'm so not good at it. And there are so many people that, claim to be good at it and then don't do anything, that, it's like, gosh, when you get somebody who actually knows what they're doing, I'm looking forward to hearing how the magic happens. Frankly. So so I'm gonna tune back, listen, and shut up.
I feel the same way. And I'll share something in a moment related to marketing and PR, but just as a quick kind of update for those people that are confused or like, like, okay, what's going on? And if you are voting on that side of things, I wanted to show you kind of the current scorecard of who's up and who's in on the Republican side of things. And here are your current choices. And so I don't know anything about the North Dakota governor, other than other people are saying we don't know anything about this North Dakota governor. I think as far as the subliminally overt, which I will talk about in just a second, I think Chris Christie going on to ABC News on Sunday mornings was brilliant. From that perspective of just being on there. He wasn't antagonistic. He wasn't, he was kind of doing all the right things. He was continuing to distance himself from President Trump. And then, as you would expect, Mike Pence and DeSantis are in, and then the others don't know about too much about this Arkansas governor or about this 37-year-old entrepreneur, other than that's probably more of a marketing stunt for him and his company. But so anyway, just a quick sharing of that. On the PR marketing side, if when I was in school way back when that Carolina allowed for minors in psychology, I would have taken it, because I'm very interested in how people process things and how they do certain things. I've been convinced that we all have photographic memories, but we just don't know how to use them. And so things like it took, and I don't know if this is going to show, but it says most of them are name tags, are magnetic name tags, say Shoemaker, Loop and Kendrick LLP, which is completely useless information. So years ago, I asked for attorneys at law to be put underneath there, so that it's like you get to stage 3 of the conversation. Oh, is it a CPA firm? Is it a law firm? That kind of thing. And then the other thing is these, I just got this week, this lapel pin. I see all these bankers walking around with these. And again, you don't have to say anything. You're like burning those things into people's retinas. Or when I do a seminar and I could talk about whatever, but so long as my logo is in the corner or in front of those people and they're burning into their retinas, then, that's to me a success. So
or behind your head.
Yes, exactly. So they have to see that if I'm properly stationed in the frame. So a lot of that stuff, but then that also goes into the psychology of when bad things happen or when people talk poorly about you and kind of the spin and those kind of things. So also interested, the good and the bad things and kind of what people do and should be doing and not be doing. So those are kind of general questions that I have as we go through this. But again, thank you for being here.
Yeah, that's great. So Anna, we'll go ahead and just tee this thing up and say, all right, a lot of times, and I remember in 2001, when I decided to leave bizjournals.com and go be an owner again of an ad agency and design studio called Axiom Creative Group. And my chairman, Ray Shaw, said, Gary, I'm really concerned. I think we've got recessionary war clouds on the horizon. And he said, the first thing that gets cut is marketing. That was what Ray Shaw told me. He was really trying to keep me from leaving. But I thought, I love small business. To be an owner with two guys that I had merged together when I was at Bank of America, I thought, yeah, let's do it. Well, guess what? Yeah, that's right. That's exactly what happened with the dot-com bubble that had already burst. We were still in some recessionary things, and then nobody foresaw 9/11 happening, and it just completely dried up, money like that. So in your business, what are some of the things that you're hearing from business owners on why they're coming to you? And what are the fears or the things that are out there? And what are the things that people should be doing now to help kind of mitigate that risk and opportunities that to separate themselves apart? And what would be some of the things not to do?
Great question. And no way let's make me feel fearful of my job. For those in this group today, you may have heard this phrase, make friends before you need them. And I think that often applies to marketing and PR as well. You want, as a business, you want to build your champions, your stakeholders, your brand before times get tough. You want to build that strong foundation. And that's done both with marketing efforts, but also true relationship building. And as we're kind of picking up this conversation, I heard, a couple different things, and people often group PR, marketing all together. And it's like, what's the difference between PR and marketing? What's the difference between social media and, getting a news story? And everyone's trying to group it all together. And it's actually, in my opinion, smart to do it that way, because reputation does drive sales. Reputation management historically has been in that PR world. Marketing has been the marketing funnel that leads to sales. In today's environment, we're seeing a lot of crossover between sales and reputation. Businesses, CEOs, they are all being held super high standards. They're being held accountable for what they say, what they do, how they act, and what positions they're taking on global things, whether it's climate change, workforce reskilling, societal issues. CEOs are being held more accountable. That's reputation. So the CEO missteps and says something bad, that's going to impact, their sales funnel as well. So all of a sudden you have this much more interconnected line between reputation management and sales, or PR, again, reputation, and marketing, sales are being connected, because what your brand is about in the public world is impacting your sales. You no longer do you have the days of Coca-Cola. Everyone knows it. Everyone thinks it's a great brand, but they make a misstep, that impacts the sales. You kind of see this playing out, in the political landscape, where, brands like Disney, Bud Light are being bold with political type messaging, and it is creating different shifts in their consumer habits. So really, I think for any business right now, it's really important to kind of break down that wall between PR and marketing, and make sure your two sides are talking. And if they're not talking, figure out ways they can talk and create that really aligned strategy, so that what your reputation is also connected back into how you're marketing and talking about your company.
Yeah, that's good.
And you asked a couple questions. I can keep going through that, but
yeah, keep going.
Well, and I think so your question of, what are keeping CEOs? Why are they calling? Why are they coming here? And I think everyone is in this interest of, how do I tell my story? Thinking about talking to this group today, there's things you can't control. There's a lot of things you can't control in the world, and how your business is run, from supply chain to market shift to whatever is out there. But there are at least 3 things you can control. And when a client comes to us from the PR side of, hey, I need to kind of get my story in place. I need to know how to talk about myself. I need to know what we're doing. That's where I start. Let's understand these 3 things. What is your story? Why do you exist? What do you offer? What value do you provide to the world? What are you doing as a CEO, as a leader in your company? And if you don't know how to answer that question, we need to work on figuring that out. Second thing you can control is what you offer. What is your service? How is it differentiated? What is your product? What quality does it bring? What value does it bring? Is there demand for your product? That's something you can control, is both the quality of your service and the quality and utility of your product. And the third thing you can control is how you treat people. And that perhaps is one of the most important things that's overlooked, is how you as a leader in your organization are treating both employees and customers. You treating them like people? Are you engaging with your workforce? Because those are the people that will be your champions. In today's media ecosystem, there's really 4 different ways people are receiving communication. Earned media, that's what everyone thinks of. Oh, I got a New York Times story, I'm mentioned by CNBC. That's the earned media. That's a reporter writing about your brand. Owned media is on extreme rise, and AI is only making that owned media space more popular. Owned media is the media you control, the content you put on your LinkedIn, your blog posts, your website, a video you produce, anything that you have direct ownership over what it says and how it's delivered. Paid media, that's billboards, advertisements, radio spots, whenever you pay to get kind of your brand out there. You're drafting the message, but you're equipping a third party to help get that message out there. And then the fourth is shared. So that's social media channels, what you're putting out there and how you're getting people on social channels to share your conversation. When you think about those 4 channels, those are all your tools in your toolbox. You can control the paid, you can control the owned to a certain extent, but to really get people to engage with your brand, you actually have to remove yourself from the equation and do a really good job of getting your brand out there, because the strongest brands are those that say verbatim what you want to say about your brand when you're not in the room. So take, for example, I often do this when I present to boards of directors. I ask every board of director, and they're kind of debating what's their tagline, what's their name. I ask everyone, what does your company do? And 9 out of 10 times, unless someone's done this thoughtful exercise, everyone says something differently. So it's really, really important that you get that strong foundation of what is your story, what is it you do, and ensure that everyone in your company and then everyone who you're working with knows that story. Because from there, you can leave. You can not be in a room and everyone's talking about your brand and saying what you want them to say. That's the strongest brand. So focus on doing the 3 things you can control first, and then we can talk more about those tactics building on that foundation.
Yeah, that's really good. It's interesting. So we engaged a group that I met the CEO in a LinkedIn forum that I'm in, named Damon Burton, and he has a company called SEO National, and he's hands down the best SEO person I've ever seen or met, like hands down, not even close. And a lot of people dabble in it and they say that they know, but that's the only thing he focuses on. That's all he does. And he is saying, well, what happens if paid media becomes illegal? Like in some cases it could be, in certain pharmaceuticals or whatever, there's some movement. Whether it happens or not, I don't know. But so what happens if they shut that channel off for you? Then I think you're in trouble. And one thing I appreciate kind of your tiering. So what was that first one that you said, those then owned, then paid, then shared? What was the first one?
Earned, owned, shared, and paid.
Yeah. So performance and results, that's PR. It's like you can't pay for a story because then it has to say sponsored or it has to say advertising, because you can't fake it, and so that earned media is a really good thing. But again, that's kind of outside of your control. You got to keep doing what you do, but then somebody recognizes it and boom, you get acknowledged for that. Like Joe Gass is being acknowledged for being a great CEO. Terrific job, Joe. He didn't pay for that, so I think that's really good. And I like the fact that you're talking about blurring the lines a little bit too, because there are things that social media world. We just had a call the other day. It's a $200 million company, been with their CEO or CPA firm for 38 years. And I said, well, how did you find us? Why did you talk to us? He said, Gary, I've been reading your stuff on LinkedIn. Then I've been on some of your webinars. One of those 162 weeks, he is on it. Well, and we don't charge for it. We aren't doing it to earn money. We're doing it to serve people. But those things, like what you said, I love what you said, make friends before you meet them. I can't tell you how many times that we've done that, but there is consistency that's required in all of that. There's consistency, and a lot of people kind of lose that fact. How do you recommend that somebody understands and maintains their voice? Because I've also seen this other thing where people try to project something that they're not. And I've seen this in a colossal way where a friend and former client projects this really amazing Instagram show reel, but it's a train wreck inside the company and they cannot keep people. But you look on the Instagram, it's like, woo, that is one happening company. And inside it's a colossal mess. And I hate saying it because I love that, that company. I love the CEO, but it's just a mess. How do you deal with that tension of projected and reality?
Yeah, that's funny because that's like they're getting a divorce. They look so happy based on their Facebook and their Instagram.
Yes.
So this is a fascinating one of like making the FOMO match up with the internal, piece in
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
And that's a great question. And you have to match it up because eventually you're going to get egg on your face and it's going to be terrible. What I do with our clients is our first exercise really is looking to find their white space and understanding where their voice can and should be. Just because you can say something doesn't mean you should say something. So I often see this play out in the DEI angle. So with diversity, equity, and inclusion, with Juneteenth coming up on the horizon, everyone can support Juneteenth, and it's a federal holiday. Everyone, should be behind it. But should you, as a CEO, unless you've done the work to instill those values of DEI in your company, should you be publicly celebrating and applauding your company for DEI? And that's a really hard question to have with CEOs and leaders because it's about accountability. Sure, you can say something and say, we believe in this, we do this, but when the rubber meets the road, are you actually showing results and success on the side of it? So when we do an audit with a company, like the CPA world, we really pull back and look at their story. You look at the numbers, we look at the story and see what is matching up. And our goal, anyone can be benefited by PR. We're really trying to find the truth narrative. Sure, there's going to be messy stuff inside every company, and that doesn't mean we can't work with you and help tell a story, but we really aspire to look for that white space that you can own. So for our clients, we would recommend, if it is messy on the inside of the company, but we still want to have a public face for the company and the brand, let's figure out that space that you can own and credibly talk about. Maybe you have a really loyal customer base and everything you're putting out there is about the great customer reviews. You're not necessarily going to be highlighting happy employees and workforce because, hey, that's not the truth of the matter. But let's deflect and focus on the white space that you can credibly own and develop that. And then on the side, let's work on fixing all those problems internally so we can one day get those happy testimonials that talk about your company. So I think it's really, really important for CEOs to be very disciplined about what they are saying. There's so much societal conversations, business conversations that can be had, but you really need a question, should I be part of these conversations? Because if you're saying everything, you're saying nothing. And I think it's really important for businesses to think about what stories are we owning, what's our leadership voice, and be consistent on that. It might feel repetitive, but it's only repetitive to your brand if you're the person saying it over and over and over again. Your customers are maybe getting, if you look at like the average click-through rates of website content and social posts going out there, you're getting like a few percentage points conversion rates on a lot of those messages. So they're out there, people are seeing them, but it's only a small percentage are actually clicking and engaging with it. So I think it's important for brands to understand, like, you don't have to be saying everything, but what you are saying should be extremely credible and authentic.
Yeah, that is so good. Yeah, go ahead, Jack. You raised your hand.
All right. Tengo una pregunta porque yo sé que tú hablas español. And so my
No hablo español.
yeah, apparently you're proficient. I checked out your bio. So first question is linking, like, okay, so I assume I just took you by surprise. So linking something that is personal to the person that you're speaking with, along with the message that you want to send to them, is question number one. But then the real question is the utilization of LinkedIn versus Facebook versus other social media. So many years ago, in all of our younger ages, there was this new little platform where you could, see how many degrees of separation that you are with others. And then that's what LinkedIn became, right? And so the one theory is, yes, accept all invites and expand your network. So you're kind of, as you say, make friends before you need them, kind of thing. But the flip side of that is, okay, now you're connected with people that are there to sell you services, that are leveraging off of your network to see who you know, and are, soliciting you for services from overseas. And it's like, there's just no rhyme or reason other than someone is out there mining information and sending out invites. So that's question number two. And then question number three is use of Facebook and other things that are meant to be more personal, social, and intermixing them with business as another method distribution of your method.
Right. Interrupt me if I'm getting these questions wrong.
No worries.
So the first one about like delivering a personal message, to an audience and how you kind of like leverage that, right? That's what we're talking about, is like personalizing. So you're not just selling a sales pitch, you're personalizing it. Absolutely. That is so important. And this kind of applies to all of your questions. The number one rule is to know your audience. Where are they living? Where are they consuming their content? What are their behaviors? Are they checking email at 6 a.m.? Are they on the Instagram at 9 p.m. scrolling through? Where does your audience live? And why are they on that platform? Are they using that platform for education purposes? Or are they using it for social connections and building networks? And so I think that's really, really important to understand. And so then when you're delivering that message to them, you not only are shaping it to the person, you're shaping it to the environment. So your message needs to reach them in a way not only tailored towards them, but then also kind of capturing the environment of where that message is. What you push on LinkedIn should be different than what you push on Facebook. Different audiences and different reasons people utilize it. But personalization of messages is so important. I can't claim this is something I say. A friend of mine mentioned this, but I loved how he phrased it. He said, when CNBC calls, you send a person, you don't send a logo. And I think brands often miss that aspect. A logo is not selling your company. A person is selling your company. You're not selling your services to a logo. You're selling your services to a person who wants to get utility and value from your services, your product. So speaking to people and people talk, removing all the jargon, no matter if you're a high-tech company, a high pharmaceutical company, a complex biopharmacy going on, or you're just, booking reservations at a restaurant. Remove the jargon, speak personally to people, and acknowledge where they are and how they want to consume that information. Absolutely a must. You don't need to be the smartest person in the room, but you should be the most easy person to understand the room. Say it, and so people get it, and they don't have a bunch of questions about what you just said. You don't have to prove your smartness anymore, period. Your question though, then about, maybe the overuse of social platforms. Social platforms, like, in 2 years, I was going to say 10 years, no, really in 2 years, we have a whole new suite of social platforms out there. Most recently, we've gone through Lemonade, TikTok, gosh, I'm blanking on the name of the one that you join and you have conversations with people, like a podcast type one. I'm blanking on it because it was the rage, during COVID. Now I can't even remember the name of it because it's kind of
Yeah,
fallen off
it was a flash up. What was it? I was like, I don't have time for
invite
that.
only. Yeah, I have a login somewhere. But we are recycling through social platforms very, very quickly. And I think the average consumer is maybe landing on one or two platforms that they use. And there probably is one more heavily leaned towards personal, likely a LinkedIn-esque one or Instagram, and then one that's leaning more towards, so professional for that, and then personal, maybe it's more Facebook / Instagram. And obviously Twitter's in there somewhere, which goes up and down the day of whether we like Twitter or don't. It's hard for me to even follow. But I hear what you're saying of like, do you accept everyone? How big do you make your social following? No one should ever be on one, put all your eggs in the basket on one brand platform, period. If you overinvest your company into one social platform, that is a risky mistake because one piece of legislation, just as Gary was talking about, paid ads to be disappeared one day, we're seeing that play out with Facebook. Facebook is cracking down how people sell on the platform. There are so many things outside of our control. So it's really important that you leverage social platforms as a tool, but not the only tool. You got to have diversity in your toolbox. And then the last question, just kind of like, mixing professional and personal, again, it's knowing your audience. The majority of your audience on LinkedIn is a professional audience. Keep your content professional. Talk about why they're on LinkedIn. They're on LinkedIn because they're looking to build business connections, find services and products. Keep that relevant. I do think, though, if there is a personal update that has an impact on your professional life, it's okay to occasionally share that. Example, I believe I shared when I had my second daughter a couple months after it happened, just like a photo, and it was in celebration of working mothers. For me, that was a personal photo, but it signaled I'm part of this community of working mothers. For me, that felt authentic and organic, and it was one of my more high-performing posts. So I'm on there every single day posting pictures of my girls. You can find me on Instagram, although it's a private account, if you want to see those. Vice versa, personal accounts can often have value for professional as well. Just because you have, you cultivate a network of friends and family, you don't have to keep them separate from your professional life. Every once now and then, share what you're doing, your work with them, put out a question out there and get some engagement. And then bring them over to your professional account if they want more of that content. The lines have all blurred between professional and personal in terms of, there's no separation between two lives these days, but there are different platforms for how you should be using them. And I think it's really important to think about your audience first when you're posting on them. Why are they on that platform and why are they listening to your voice? And, drive your content that way.
I love your spandex reference. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Same goes for yoga pants and everything else. So it's like, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
I'm wearing Lululemon slacks right now, so just be careful. They're quite cozy. All right.
Athleisure. There you go. Where you talk about knowing your audience, I think that's really, really critical. I would also add to that, one thing that I found is it's equally important to know yourself and know, like, yeah, and you've talked about this, but a lot of times what I see people do is they feel like, oh, well, I'm selling to this or that type of a person, so I have to behave like that. Well, I think it comes down to understanding purpose. Like, what is your company purpose, and getting really serious about that, not just some stupid half-day exercise before you go play golf. Hey, let's get in a room and let's define our purpose and our core values. No. It has to be real. It has to be who you are. And I think that's one thing that I've seen us do at BGW, for good or bad. When we went into COVID lockdown, and we've had partners say, you guys, we all need to be wearing suits, we need to be more professional, blah, blah, blah. Well, who we serve, yeah, we serve some professional folks like that, but we also serve a lot of people that when dressing up is like their logoed, polo, that's dressing up. They're out mucking around in the fields or whatever, and they don't really want to see a bunch of suits and ties coming in. And that's not kind of who we are anyway. But COVID got us really serious about like who we are. We know who we are. And we also, one other thing that I will say that this is really important. So anybody listening, get somebody outside the jar to help you read the label, like an Anna, or somebody that you can trust. Like Terry DeBoo came in way before I came in to help BGW kind of clarify, like, what do you do? What do you do? And, everybody has these, hey, let's just keep adding to these compound sentences so that it's this big, long gobbledygook that nobody can remember, but it sure, is inclusive. Terry DeBoo said, well, what I'm hearing is you guys help people save money, make money, stay out of trouble. Boom. Yeah, that's exactly what we do. And then I came in and I said, plus we help them have fun. And it's not just because we're blowing up balloons and stuff like that. It's because if people get in their sweet spot and they're running their companies and they're not worrying, it's having fun. That's part of it too. But that really helped us. So we kind of look at everything through the lens of that. Like, who are we serving? What is it we do? And kind of what's our personality? And just be who you are. Like, be your unique self. I think it's really, really important. So Jack, you have a hand.
That was from before, but I have plenty of questions, but we can continue going because so keep going. And Anna, what do you want to talk about? Like, what do you want to tell people about what they should be doing and should not be doing? Why don't we talk about the things they should not be doing?
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Gary, earlier you mentioned something that I asked me 2 years ago. I would have said, don't do that. And my perception has shifted a little bit. So I'm going to first say something which I want to clarify. You said, don't do this, which was the paid sponsored content. And 2 years ago, I would have said, don't waste your money on sponsored content because everyone sees right through it. It's you controlling the narrative. But today, people are building such niche audiences. People get content from people they trust. So think about this. This is a curated audience of people that know of, work with BGA and Gary and this group. They have been coming to you for 162 weeks for this advice. You could charge me to come on this and say, hey, Anna, would you like to be a guest? Pay $100 and you get access to this great network of business owners. And technically this would be sponsored content. But this is a curated audience of people that are invested and trusting and want this helpful insight. Does that make it icky that I would be paying to have access to this audience? I don't think so anymore because people trust, people. And people are building these niche communities where they're getting their information, where they're getting their news sources. Sure, you still might turn on the local news or national network and get your news that way, but you're likely also getting your news these days from, LinkedIn or a newsletter you signed up for because you like their content. So I would just keep that in mind of, again, kind of piggybacks on the audience, just because it might be a sponsored kind of opportunity. If that's where your audience lives and your audience is trusting that platform, doesn't mean it's a bad place to be kind of putting your message out there. I think remarkably, I came across a stat the other day from an Edelman survey where it said nearly 1 out of 2 respondents view government and media as divisive forces in society. People don't trust media as they used to. They see it as divisive because they are political shifts in different media. And so I think if you can find a community where people are really building trust and you as a consumer, as your audience trust that group, it's not a bad place to live. And I know I'm shooting myself and my industry in the foot a little bit by saying media is not as relevant, but it's not. People are actually going to different sources for different information, and that's where they're getting trusted information. They don't trust what they see in the news as much as they used to. So when it comes to, what should you not be doing? I think it should be anything that should not be doing anything that is destroying trust in your brand. So going back to, identifying your core values and living through them. Think about, like, before you would take on a customer, even like if it came out that I was working with so-and-so customer, would that destroy trust in my brand? Consumers care a lot about brand values of their companies. From the same survey I was reading from Edelman, it said, 58% will buy or advocate for brands based on their beliefs and values. 60% will choose a place to work based on their beliefs and values. And 80% of all respondents will invest based on their beliefs and values. So the number one thing you can do is do anything that would hurt or harm your beliefs and values. And that would be doing things like chasing after money at the expense of your values, taking on customers at the expense of your values or beliefs. So it's really, really important that brands and companies actually have values in place and live by them, because the commercial world is paying attention, and it will come out. And if you kind of are misstepping along the way, and then you'll really need these for some crisis times. And then the other thing is just, again, trying to be everything to everyone. You don't need to do that. If you're doing something really well, you'll get loyal customers. And I think loyal repeat customers, any brand probably would agree, is better than one-time customers at volume, because then you're always chasing that cost per lead. If you're constantly having to find new leads to buy your services and products, that's just only adding additional cost to your operating expense, because then you're constantly looking for new leads, versus if you're just trying to find ways to keep customers engaged, repeat, loyal, referral based. That's a much better tactic than just finding massive growth.
So what about the intensity of the message? So sharing mission, values, etc. So, do you put it on the landing page of your website? Do you put it on the cover page of a response for a request for proposal? Yeah. Or do you, is that like your first paragraph inside? Like, so how much in lights do you put? Would you say you should put that so it's not obvious that you're, let's say you're a Christian family oriented business? I mean, so where would you display that to make it not blatantly obvious that you're trying to say, hey, look at me and come work with me because of this, it being more again subliminal and not as overt? So
every brand is different, but I think it's really important to think through your content pillars. There's likely 4 or 5 things you can, thematic groups of content you can put out there. Values is somewhere usually between 10 to 20% of your content mix. So if you think about, you're doing 5 social posts a week, maybe one a week, one every other week should be that right content mix. You should absolutely not be just pushing down your core values and beliefs every single sales opportunity, every single sales message. You think about Chick-fil-A. As a Christian company, they don't operate on Sundays. Everyone that goes to Chick-fil-A for different reasons. Most of it's because they have really good chicken. But I think, people know of their values because that's kind of part of their content mix. They're finding ways to naturally bring that in. So you don't want to be offensive or alienating as the brand either, and be pushing it down people's mouths what your values are. My business, for example, we are women owned and women led. We only have our staff currently only has full-time women on our staff. About 80% are moms. We are really proud to be working moms, but we don't push that down people's values. We don't say, advocate all day long for empowering women or whatever. We just kind of let those core values of what we believe are our strengths kind of shine through and find ways to naturally highlight that. So I think thinking through, like, what is your complete story? What are the 4 or 5 content pillars of your story? So values, quality of product, customer reviews, brand vision, what you want to do and change in the world, and then maybe something fun. It's, a fun feature. Those might be your 5 content pillars. And you think through, like, if you look at your website, okay, 20% of my content should be focused on our core values, or maybe it's 10%. But it's really, really important to define your content strategy and provide consistency across all your platforms.
I'm glad you brought up websites too, Anna, because we had a site prior to COVID that it was okay. It just didn't really reflect who we were. It was nice, but it was kind of like everybody else. And like, I'm like, wait a minute, you know? And so now when people go, and it's not because it's a perfect site or anything like that, but we spent the money to go HubSpot. We had a number of things that we wanted to do, and we researched like who and that sort of thing. And then the right partner that partnered with us, Nomad, which is, you know, we love those guys, they're a client. They did a great job, but they were reflective of who we were. And so it's not the same as any other stuffy CPA firm. And it's not because we're trying to be different. It's just, we're trying to be who we are. And it makes it a whole lot easier to attract people that kind of dig us, you know, and that we don't have to have uncomfortable conversations with because we sold them one thing and then delivered something else. Oh, wait a minute, your Instagram reel says you're this, but in reality, you got some bozo showing up in a t-shirt like Gary, you know, like what's up with that? So anyway, I think that's really important. I'm really glad that you're talking about that. The other thing that I'd like to have you just talk about is consistency, because a lot of times people think, oh, okay, well, we're in a tough time, so we need to, you know, squirrel some money together and go do this one thing. Like, wait a minute, you know. So talk about consistency, and how can somebody that's on a budget, what can they do in practical steps so it doesn't feel like they're boiling the ocean?
Yep. And I will highlight, I'm really bad at business development because I'm constantly telling clients, you don't need me for that. Let me give you the strategy and the skill so you can go do it yourself. And I'm mindful of that. A lot of our clients are small businesses, medium-sized businesses, and I want to be working with clients for multiple years. And if they pay me all they got on their bank account for 1 year, and then they leave after 2 years because they can't afford it anymore, that's a bad client. That's a bad client relationship. There are so many incredible tools out there, from Canva to make graphics, you know, other, you know, logo creators on websites. I'm not trying to, you know, again, kill our industry, but there is a lot of really great technology tools out there to help people leverage, you know, their story and get it out there. I love social media scheduling as well. I think that's really powerful. It's obviously not something you do for time relevant, time sensitive information. But if you're a CEO and you're like, hey, I know I have to tell something about my brand once a week at least, you get a social media scheduler, and you periodically schedule a post that goes out once a week and talks about your brand, or it shares a news article, and you kind of are having that consistency content out there. I think it's really, really important for every company to do a complete, thoughtful, strategic exercise of understanding what their story is, what are their content pillars, and what is that white space they can own. Just because your competitors are doing something doesn't mean you need to do it either. That's a really strong part of our process as well, is understanding what your peers might be doing and understanding how you play in that peer mix. We don't want to be copycats. We don't want to just be trying to play a game of who can do the most social posts, who has the best website with competitors, but you're really looking at how your existing content gets the most value with your audiences, and how are you kind of engaging and speaking to your audiences. And once you kind of figure out that whole strategy and content mix, from there, you can do some pretty turnkey things of just regularly getting your content out there. You know, commit to a blog post once a quarter. That's pretty easy to do. Write a blog post once a quarter. You know, put your thoughts out there, or even easier, interview one of your clients and say, hey, I have 5 questions I want to ask you, and talk about, you know, our product with you and how you use in your company. That's the one content item you can put out there where you have another person talking about why they like your product or service. You know, get a strategy in place, commit to something, and then do it. And then leverage all the tools out there to help get it out there. Again, part of the strategy planning is knowing what channels you should be marketing on. So you might say, okay, I need to do a website, I need to have social, I have to have a newsletter, I have to do a video series, a blog post, billboards, advertising, blah, 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 blah. That communication has gazillions of tools out there. Part of your content strategy is figuring out what are the maybe 2, 3 things that will work really well for me, and then focus on doing those 2 or 3 things really well over time. And then in a year or 2, adjust. Hey, what are my KPIs on this? Do we get good results from this effort? And if you did, keep doing it. Maybe double down on it. If you're not, okay, let's figure out what didn't work well there. What were the shortcomings, and adjust to a different strategy. But consistency is absolutely king, because people have to hear a message over and over again before it really sticks. And focusing your message on a couple different tactics is much better than trying to boil the ocean.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. The other thing that I've seen, think back to the priceless campaign that MasterCard had for decades, like decades. Most companies, and especially the marketing department, they get bored with the same thing. So hey, let's mix it up. There's a fine line there, man. Like yeah, you want to have some freshness, but a common theme. And I think that's where MasterCard did a really, really good job a number of years ago, where it was just this priceless thing. How do you differentiate, one card versus Visa versus Amex, and it wasn't on features and benefits. So I just think those kind of things, be mindful that you may get bored with it faster than your audience, because you're paying attention to it, but there's a lot of messaging out there. And one other thing that I'd like you to talk about, Anna, is, okay, somebody is thinking, yeah, we kind of need to up the game, but man, I'm spread so thin, I'm CEO, whatever. Have you seen where that CEO goes back down to the front line, because now we got social media and everybody's got a camera? Now all of a sudden you're a videographer, about how to enlist people that may be millennials, et cetera, or even people my age that just dig that kind of stuff, that want to be involved, but they need to know how to be involved and know where the guidelines are, so that they don't do something crazy and then all of a sudden find themselves fired, or put their brand in a really tough place to be.
One of the most popular products that we're in the service business, so we also make products that we're helping clients build, are brand guidelines. In the past, as a graphic designer, Gary, you're like, that's how you treat a logo, how much spacing you have to do it, what colors are approved, what fonts are approved. Much bigger than that. This is brand guidelines that actually tell your brand story. And I think it's really important for a CEO to be involved in shaping a brand story, but then ensuring that it's not just stuck in an inbox somewhere, that brand guideline can actually go live and breathe throughout your company. So things like, here's our brand story. This is how we talk about ourselves. Here's like our brand voice. We are helpful, thoughtful, sincere, or maybe it's for BJ, we are sarcastic, funny, witty, surprising. Put an actual adjective to your brand so you have a personality, and share that with your team. Like, we talked a little about dress code before. Absolutely, how you dress is a reflection of your company, and I think you want that to be really authentic, of saying, hey, we wear t-shirts here because we want our clients to feel comfortable, and they know we're rolling our sleeves up to work with them. We don't need to pretend to be fancy CPAs, and that's not true to who we are. So I think it's really important to develop those brand guidelines that account for the brand personality, and then allow the CEO to present that and say, you all are part of our brand. Every single employee is the brand. And the goal is to be able to have the CEO, the leadership, leave the room, leave the company even, but the brand exists at the workforce level. The brand isn't a CEO. It's not a business leader. The brand is the company and every person that's representing it. Your brand is also your customer. So I think once you get out of the mindset of a brand is something that you control and lives in a box, and recognize that brand is actually the extension of your team, that's a really fun way to get your team involved and being that living, walking extension of the brand. Yes, you're probably like, oh my gosh, I don't trust my employees, they're going to say something wrong. So you do trainings, you make it fun. You have a lunch and learn, talk about the origins of your logo, why this came to be, share the CEO story. We recently were working with a company and we're like, what does this logo mean? And the CEO told us it's a raindrop, a drop, kind of just like a raindrop it looked like, but it actually represented for a story his grandfather told him, where he put the faucet on and let it drip overnight and showed his grandson the next morning that the bucket was full of water, showing a little bit of savings goes a long way in the run. And that's the company's logo now, is a drop, showing that a little bit of a drop goes a long way over time. So I think it's really important that you tell that story and get people excited about the brand, and then allow yourself to leave and exit kind of those discussions. Allow your workforce to shape and evolve it, but give them the guidelines. Don't let them invent it. Give them the strategy, the focus, and kind of like the parameters, and then allow them to go live and breathe it.
Oh, that's good. That's some good stuff, Anna. We've gotten some nice stuff in the chat too from Chris, who's always on here or frequently, and same way with Joe Gass. And this is kind of near and dear to his heart because Heritage Printing, they do a lot of in-store and environmental graphics. So you go into Spectrum Arena, you're going to see their branding and their graphic work there. So they're very visual as well, which plays into this thing as well. But if you don't build based on a foundation, you're building on sand. You're just shifting sand, and the stuff's going to fall down, and it can be embarrassing and it can cost you a bunch of money. So I'm really glad that you dealt with that. Anna, we may want to have to bring you back on because I think we just barely touched all the stuff that can be done. I think it'd be really interesting too for some, like, to get down into the weeds on, all right, so what practically can we do? Like, yeah, we know we need to do it. It's kind of like, yeah, I need to start exercising. I need to get on a diet, but I don't know what to do. I think that would be kind of a fun part 2 at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Coming down the pike. So anyway,
Absolutely.
I know we're kind of hitting the top of the hour. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for being so willing to do this.
Absolutely. And I, shameless plug here, but it's relevant. We're rolling out small business packages later this fall, this year. So if you're interested in some of that information, we'll be rolling it out. You can go to annacoms.com and enter your email and stay tuned for kind of that update. But excited to share more when we get all that worked out.
Yeah, Anna, that would be great. Let's plan on, like, kind of prior to your rolling out of that, maybe kind of late summer, reconvene and dive deeper into that, because I think that'd be very relevant.
Sounds like a plan. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
It's
cool.
good to be here with you all.
Thank you so much. Anything else, Adam or Jack, before we sign off? Nope. Okay. Have a great day, everybody. Don't breathe the air. Definitely don't go to New York City right now.
Thank you, Anna.
Bye.
Bye.